you can say what you want, and diversity is wonderful. That I love diversity. I love that about the country, but you are going to be drawn to people that look more like you and identify like you.
Sure. And all the stories that I was carrying at that one time, and for a little while just to be able to separate from that. What a gift.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll pretty much talk about any of my painful experiences with anybody.
Yeah.
Because if there's a chance that I'm able to impact that person, but like I am a believer in the power of vulnerability.
What's up, guys? No Nonsense Podcast. Eric Uresk here. A solo cast today with my producer Max, and we're just gonna kind of shoot the shit today and have ourselves a conversation. And,
Yeah.
hope you guys enjoy.
I'm good at shooting the shit.
Yeah, you are. You're really good. Surprisingly, our pilot episode was just like, all right, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm actually gonna keep that as like, so yeah. And
I know that made me feel good. I was like, oh, good. It was a quality episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So before while we were setting up in here and getting everything going, when you're just some of the platitudes people sort of throw out there, and like if you're going through something and somebody probably well-intended tells you, oh, you just got to think positive, right? And
it could be worse, bro.
It could be worse, or you just got to think positive, and they talk you out of what you're actually experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think that's interesting. My take on that, I think there's some people out there that are uncomfortable with people that are in less than happy emotions, right?
So, for them.
For them.
Yep.
They're really talking about their discomfort.
Exactly.
With whatever it is that you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're having a tough time, they're struggling with you having a tough time. And so I think there's a need to try to change your experience so that if you're comfortable, they'll be more comfortable.
Totally. Absolutely. And I'm actually guilty in the past of doing that, especially in close personal relationships. Mm-hmm. Because when you're in close proximity, girlfriend, wife, whatnot, I mean, if I'm like wired to be a fixer. I'm like, well, there's an issue. Okay, you're feeling this way. What can I do? What do you need? And, it may just be like, I just need to be upset for a while. But it's like, it's not comfortable for me. Like, or maybe I'm feeling like I'm not going to get if you're upset, I'm not going to get what I need today.
Right.
And so there's that, need to fix. But it's interesting. I was actually, that you brought that up, that we were just talking about that. I was going to bring that up too. I had this experience with one of the guys in my band who, he's doing better now, but he went through a little period where he had lost his job, couldn't find another one. His ex-wife was like purposely withholding his kid so he couldn't see him, and like telling him all this crazy stuff, so he didn't want to go see his dad. And she got the more the kid is with mom, the higher he has to pay in child support. Yeah. So he's just getting gouged, and like, he was just clearly not okay. And he's in a band with me and we got to work. So a lot of the times I'm just like, all right, dude, let's focus, let's get to work. But there's one time I went up to see him, and like I could just tell like he was just that close to a meltdown.
Right.
And I sat him down and I was like, dude, like, you're a good man, you're a good father. He was telling me some of his backstory that he doesn't tell anybody, because he's one of these like, I never want to bother anybody. I never want to, you know what I mean? So you don't really know much about him, but I just basically sat there with him and I was like, dude, I know this sucks. Like, it sucks, man. I get it. It's okay. And I mean, he had like a emotional episode right in front of me. But then after, it was like, she shifted.
Yeah.
It was almost like energy left his body.
100%.
Yeah. So
100%.
Have you had experiences like that too?
Oh yeah, dude. So like, even like while I'm listening to that, so it's like, you're telling me all the pieces of this guy. So, okay, first of all, life is just taking him to the cleaners right now. Right. So he has some venomous woman in his life just looking to get revenge and make him suffer.
Yep. And it's dealing with his kid.
And man, that's so hard, because the way that the courts get involved in these things, it's like, it really does leave a lot of men powerless.
It does.
Like she dictates the terms, holds the kid hostage, right? And so we're gonna try to sit here and tell this guy to to think positive.
Yeah.
Right. That's
He'll
crazy.
come back around.
Yeah,
It'll
yeah,
be okay.
yeah. That completely devalues the experience the guy's having. So I think what you did, knowingly or unknowingly, right, from like a coaching standpoint, is you validated his experience, and like then he started to open up to you and share parts of himself. And being a guy that plays everything tight to the chest, he doesn't want to burden people.
Exactly.
Right.
But I opened up the space for him to do that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Right?
And how the reason why we're such good friends is because there's a lot of similarities that we have in life. But like, I am a believer in the power of vulnerability. So like, there was this group I used to be in called the $1 Billion Brotherhood. It's now called the King's Brotherhood, but it's this guy Nicholas Bayerly, and he runs it's like a group of men, business owners. It's like a coaching program, but like a mastermind group. But I was at a meeting with them, and like he's like, okay, I want everybody to get acquainted with one another. Go around the room and let's share something that you haven't told anybody. And like, it's like, I got arrested for stealing when I was in high school, or, I was adopted and I never told anybody. When it came around to me, I was like, I was molested when I was a kid. And like, everybody was just like, and then he was like, dude, like the fact that you shared that right there shows like an incredible amount of like strength to be able to do that. And then after, I had guys from that group coming up to me. They were like, man, I thought I was the only one. Like, I had an experience and I was ashamed of it. And so like the vulnerability opens up a safe space for people to connect with you.
Yes.
And that's why like I'll pretty much talk about any of my painful experiences with anybody.
Yeah.
Because if there's a chance that I'm able to impact that person, and I've seen this in recovery, when I'm doing like a fifth step with a guy.
Totally.
And he's like embarrassed to say something, and he shares it. And then I'm like, yeah, that happened to me. And, you share that, and then their eyes just light up and they're like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that felt like that. And a lot of men, I feel like we kind of guard the heart a little bit.
Obviously, because of what I do for work, I talk to lots of people, right? And sometimes I'll get in, just time periods will go by where I'm talking to more people that are involved in some type of self-work than I am people that are not. And then if for whatever reason I start going back, mixing again with people that are not, regularly working on themselves, I forget how tight to the chest a lot of men, probably most men, hold this stuff. Like the level of vulnerability that exists prior to being given permission to have that type of vulnerability, largely, at least in my experience, man, it's these guys are carrying so much.
A ton.
And exactly what you said. It's like they don't want to burden anyone with their stuff. They feel like I don't know, maybe it feels wrong for them to do so. It might not feel safe for them to do so. They don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to There's a bunch of different reasons why people do it. And when they finally, for whatever reason, they reach a breaking point, or just something in the environment permits them to de-burden themselves, it's really one of the most beautiful things to watch. Even like I do this shit all day, every day, right?
Right.
And a couple of months ago, maybe, I did a Bufo ceremony.
What's that?
Bufo is 5-MeO-DMT.
Oh, sweet!
It's straight.
I've been here. I've heard so much about that.
I have a really incredible woman that administers that stuff to people in ceremony, and she's really talented at what she does. And one of the most profound, probably the most profound psychedelic experience that I've ever had.
Yeah,
and
it's like the enlightenment hack right there,
dude,
man.
And the unburdening that I felt in that process with the stuff that some of it I was aware I was carrying, other parts of it I was not aware that I was carrying. But man, just to be able to separate from all the things that I'm telling myself are falling on my shoulders, and all the stories that I was carrying at that one time, and to for a little while just to be able to separate from that. What a gift.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I think about that, I'm like, man, I am pretty free to let go of a lot of stuff just regularly. I have practices to do so and all that stuff. And then think about the guys that don't. Think about the guys that carry so much.
Yeah, it's like a spring that gets tightened back.
Yeah.
and then tighten back and tighten back and tighten back. Eventually, what's that thing going to do?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
anger.
Yeah. It's just gonna go.
It's got to be projected at somebody.
And exactly. And some guys, they're carrying so much that it's funny the way that it manifests. Some dudes are so loaded to the brim that there's no place for their anger to go but out. Right. Some guys will just stuff it internally and stuff it internally, and they don't have the capacity for whatever reason to outwardly express that anger. That's just as dangerous to the person.
It is. And it's like when you repress emotions, they get trapped in your body.
Yes.
And then over time, it creates inflammation, chronic disease. I mean, you can literally you can have physical consequences for holding emotional pain.
Absolutely. And that's not bro science. That's not up for debate.
It's real.
That is an actual real thing. Your body will hold on to whatever doesn't move through the body. So emotions to emote, right? When somebody's emoting, they're expressing, right? And so when these sensations come through the body, they're actually meant to be emoted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're not supposed to not feel.
Right. Exactly. So we, in functional society, if you have jobs and stuff like that, it's like, okay, I may not be able to do that while I'm on an office floor at a desk or something like that.
Yeah.
It may not be completely appropriate to emote my anger, right? But I need to have ways, practices, and understandings of how and when to do that. I also think it's interesting that, children are not yet ingrained in the norms of what's appropriate when.
Yep.
So they just emote
Yes, they
as
do.
it comes to them, right?
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about that, when a kid falls and bumps themselves, they'll start crying, and then the crying is over, and then they're just
good.
They're good. They're a new person.
Exactly.
They're not often holding, particularly when they're young, they're not holding on to these stories.
Yeah.
Right. Because they got to emote it. So it's and
the
out of them.
filters of adulthood. You shouldn't show this to these people. That's not there yet. Nope. And not to there's a guy. He's got a channel called actualize.org. His name is Leo Gura. I've been listening to him for over 10 years. He started with kind of life hack stuff, right. But now he's into really deep. He does lots of 5-MeO DMT, right. Talks about that a lot. But he talked about the fact that if you have a painful emotion, go counterintuitive and actually focus and dive into the painful emotion and feel it as large as you can.
Yes.
Because then it's be a superconductor. You got metal, electricity goes through it and out it, and the metal's not damaged. Right. As opposed to wood, it holds it all in and then lights on fire and it's done for.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. It's, there's a saying, what you resist persists, right? And so if I resist the emotion will persist because I'm not allowing it to travel its natural course.
Yeah.
Right. When I allow myself to be with the emotion, then it gets to do whatever it needs to do. Oftentimes people hear this, and what they're doing is they'll do the practice to get the emotion, the uncomfortable thing, to go away.
Right.
Right. And then, so what there often is not being understood is you're resisting it. If you're just trying to experience this to get this to go away, instead of learning how to be with your experience, there's a big difference between getting the pain to go away and learning how to be with your experience.
Yeah.
If there's any experience that I can't be with, right, in my day-to-day, when that comes up, naturally going to be driven into avoidant or possibly addictive behaviors. Okay. So when I train myself, I don't like to feel this. Okay. So unconsciously, boom, I'm going to move to the avoidant behavior.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting and being with my experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I got a question for you.
Sure.
So, personally, as somebody who's, been addicted pretty much to anything that's cool, tattoos,
right.
porn, sex, alcohol, drugs, being right, work, how, when the reason why, at like a profound level, why I seek out things to give me joy and then develop a neurotic relationship with them is because I'm just uncomfortable if I can't get that dopamine hit. So how do you be with an uncomfortable experience and not engage in behaviors like that? Like, what are some of the things that you do?
That's a good question. So the first thing that jumps out to me is stillness for me is a practice. I would bet that 99.9% of the time when a person is moving towards an avoidant behavior, they're not aware of it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right. They're just, the thought and feeling comes that, I want this. I desire this for whatever reason. They may not even be aware of why they're desiring it. They may not be aware that the desire stems from an unwillingness to sit with the discomfort. Okay. So if I just tell them to sit with the discomfort and they have no base understanding of what's driving anything,
you're crazy.
They're not going to be able to do it,
Yeah.
right? Or they're going to be really uncomfortable, right? It's like when you tell somebody or suggest a meditation and you give them no context of meditation,
right?
And they're sitting there trying to empty and clear
like,
their
I can't
mind,
not think.
I can't do it, and I can't not think. It's like, that's not the point.
Right.
The first thing is supporting somebody enough to help them begin to understand what the practice of stillness looks like.
Okay.
Can I be still with me and start to listen? All right. So I get still, I listen, and I feel. This is actually what I started doing intuitively before I got trained in anything. And I was experiencing like really bad PTSD symptoms.
Okay.
I would just go lay down, and I didn't want to, sleeping it off, I'd just wake up with it, right?
Yeah.
So I would just close my eyes and really get still to what my experience was.
So you kind of figured this out before having like any spiritual teacher or, health professional or anybody like take you through this and explain it. You were kind of doing it already.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. I've been meditating since I was like 19, 20 years old.
Nice.
Yeah. Guy that taught me judo also taught me how to meditate. And so meditation was a practice for me already.
Yep.
And so, so I actually knew how to get still. And for me, for whatever reason, I got lucky that honest reflection had always been something that was innate to me.
Really?
Yeah. Since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And as my awareness grew, my ability to honestly reflect grew. And so that's actually the process, right? It's like, as I can grow in stillness, I'll become aware of what I'm not aware of. Okay. I'll become aware of the uneasiness in my chest that actually I had no idea was there. And man, that uneasiness is actually there every time I want to go watch porn. Or every time I get into a fight with my wife or my girlfriend, I go do XYZ behavior.
Yep.
And I didn't realize this pit in my stomach that feels like I'm going to be left or abandoned sits there.
Yep.
Okay. So then the temptation is, okay, well, now I just got to understand my abandonment wound and XYZ, and then I'll get through it. And that's part of the equation, but it's not about getting through it. It's not about getting it to go away. It's about understanding how you relate to it.
Okay. What is explain that? Like, what do you mean?
So I relate this feeling to being abandoned. Okay.
Okay.
And I hate this feeling and I want to ignore this feeling. And it's like going through a process. It's usually helpful to have some guidance with this, right? Some people are skillful enough to figure this out on their own. I can actually start to love and accept this part of me as something that happened, as an experience that I have, not who I am. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So as long as the experience, like I have no separation from it. It's just, I feel it and it takes me wherever I want to go, and there's no space between it. That's gonna be very challenging. And then I'm in resistance to it the whole time because I'm just unconscious and I just think uncomfortable, bad. Right. And so that's all I'm computing in my brain and my body is uncomfortable and bad. And so what most people are generally taught, uncomfortable, bad, you need to change how you feel.
Yes.
And so panic sets in when I'm starting to change how I feel and I can't change how I feel. Now the resistance is getting worse and the suffering is growing. Okay. When a person can create stillness, they can separate from the experience, and it's not dissociating, right? or numbing out.
Yeah, you're essentially watching the experience unfold.
Yes.
From a different place. And I love how you brought up the I am type of thing. That's something with my daughter a lot when she's like, I'm slow. I'm angry. And I always say, no, you're not slow. You were just moving slow today.
Yes.
Or you feel angry. Because I remember when I was a little kid, probably 6 or 7, a bus driver told me that I moved too slow when I'm getting on the bus. And I was like I'm slow, like that.
I'm slow.
It's so,
and that's who
it's
I am.
so like, this sounds ridiculous, but that shit stuck with me
for
years.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
For years.
Well, dude, I love this. This is like one of my favorite topics, right? So that becomes a story.
Yeah.
It becomes your story and it becomes real. And now, whether you're moving slow or not, you experience yourself as the slow guy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you're constantly looking for evidence of being the slow guy.
Yep.
And guess what? If you're looking for it,
it's there.
You're going to fucking find it,
Yep.
no matter what it is.
Yep.
If you look for any evidence of anything hard enough,
you'll find it.
And you believe it, you're going to find it, right? So great job with your daughter, by the way, like telling her like, yeah, no, that's an experience that you've had. It's not who you are. So because whenever I label myself as whatever I'm currently being, right? I'm in a bad mood. He's grumpy. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Eric, he's a grumpy guy.
Yeah. Okay. My history, you may have many experiences of me being grumpy.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you hold me to that, right, you don't allow the possibility that I could show up a different way. Now, if my past predetermines my future automatically, right, then there's a drug addict is a drug addict for the rest of their life. They can never get sober.
Yeah.
Right? I used to be engaged in criminal activity. I'm no longer engaged in criminal activity, so I'm no longer a criminal.
Right.
Yeah,
people can change.
People can.
That's why you hear people say, well, people don't, like, not really, like, people don't really change. And I've got a close family member of mine that, I mean, I'll always be an alcoholic, always.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, been sober over a decade. Doesn't matter. Oh, don't give that guy, like, don't help him with any, don't give him any money. Like, he shouldn't be able to have his dad's guns because, like, you never know if he's going to drink and blow his head off. And, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's
and
the
it's
world
like,
he lives in.
It's like, this is, you know, I have not had a drop of alcohol or drugs in over a decade. And still, it's just like, nope, that's you.
Yeah,
you know?
That's fascinating because how confined people are to stories. Like I can listen to a guy like that, right? And my interpretation without knowing the guy and acknowledge this is a judgment and interpretation, right? But when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, if that's the way he thinks about everything, right? So let's suppose that's the way that he thinks about everything. Imagine how confining his world is. That every story is set in stone as a fact.
Yeah.
Right? People do this with politics. People do this with, they do this with just about every...
Easy to manipulate folks like that.
Dude, it's so easy to manipulate folks. It's easy to manipulate ourselves. It's easy to keep ourselves stuck in a story. It's why you'll get people that are in the worst situations ever, right? But they are so identified with the pain of their story that if you actually were to offer a solution that was viable, they would be terrified.
Yeah.
Because they don't know who they are outside of that story. That's the only sense of certainty that they have in their
even
life.
if it's a bad story.
Even if it's a bad story.
It's better than not knowing.
It's why women stay in abusive relationships. It's why guys keep going back to the same chick that fucking cheats on them over and over again. Like they are stuck in a story loop, and it is when your story is your identity, and depending on the strength of that identity, right? You're asking somebody to let go of their entire worldview.
Yeah.
That's not a small ask.
No.
Right?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So I understand the frustration people have when somebody is just stuck on a loop of misery. They don't take any advice and they just, you know, they're just sort of like, as my friend Justin calls them, parasites to the people around them.
Yeah.
I understand why that can be so frustrating. And I think it's good to have boundaries with people like that. But understand that for whatever reason, where they're currently at, they do not feel safe enough to let go of their worldview.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I don't engage in heated political debate with people.
No, Oh yeah, smart.
Because like I don't know. For me, like, part of what makes this country great for me is that you get to have your opinions and I get to have my opinions. And I'll tell you like something a little controversial. And I got a lot of shit for this. But back when gay marriage was first legalized, I had like, I'd say 90% of my friends, I'm a very liberal guy. 90% of my friends were on board with it, but I had about 10% that didn't believe in it. And I had people tell me like, well, you better delete those people. Like, what the fuck? Like, you can't be friends with those people. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, well, how could you be friends with somebody that doesn't support? I'm not going to throw away, 20 years of friendship because somebody has a different belief. Like, I'm not going to demonize that person because of their beliefs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so dangerous to dehumanize somebody because of a set of belief systems that they have.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time. If I'm not careful, I could fall into that too. It would have to be about very, very specific things. You know what I mean? But man, I've caught myself doing it too. And it's so dangerous. Like, when I take, well, because you believe this, that must mean you're this type of person.
Yeah.
Right. And I hold that as a fact. I can entertain the possibility that that's possible. Like, okay, there's evidence from based off my past experiences that you might believe XYZ. But man,
and we're not talking about like people who believe in murdering people. Yes, of course there's some red line
there's some
stuff.
troubling belief systems out there.
Of course.
But the minute you say, oh, you like Trump, you're a racist, right? No, that's so lazy. That's so lazy. And here's why that's lazy. And I was explaining this to a friend the other day. By the way, I would not vote for Biden or Trump. I think if you like a vote for either of those people is just a voluntarily
step in the wrong direction.
It's just you're agreeing to play in this fixed game.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing that.
Right.
So that's just my belief personally, right? You're not on the team that they're on. Okay. But there's a large, if you look around, and I'm not on any cross about this. If you're a straight white dude, right, you're not welcome in a lot of spaces. In Southern California, go around a lot of liberal spaces, right? Straight white dude, you're often not going to be welcome in a lot of spaces, right? At least online, there's rhetoric. Like you'll see a lot of rhetoric where you're demonized. So I understand why that person that doesn't feel welcome in a lot of spaces would champion somebody that says, fuck these people that are trying to tell you that you're bad or wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? That makes sense to me.
Sure.
I get that. So,
I've never had that experience though, like as a straight white guy.
Oh, I have in Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I've felt like every opportunity has been open to me.
And so what I mean, I don't mean like you won't get jobs. What I mean is go to certain social circles.
Okay.
The more woke, probably the more less welcome that you might experience. But I've been to events where I walk in. It's a very conscious crowd, right? Southern California, crystals, all that type of shit. And,
crystals.
I'm into meditation and stuff.
For sure, me too. I get it totally.
To these events, and I can feel the discomfort in some of the women when I walk.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, now I get what you're saying now. Yeah.
Okay.
So like they're saying like he doesn't look like he should,
and nobody's outwardly saying this, right?
but you kind of get looks like what's this like this scruffy tough guy tattooed guy doing with our crystals group. I get that. Now, okay,
maybe it's just because I look like I just got out of jail. Maybe it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a straight white guy. That's entirely possible, right? But that story gets exacerbated by all the stuff that you hear online, right? So if you go online, it's a fucking cesspool of that, right?
Yes.
You don't even get an opinion in certain circles if you don't meet certain criteria.
True.
Right?
True.
So now you're taking all that information in, and you're like, well, I don't want to feel like this, and this particular political party seems to be against me and my very existence. I don't want to be with them. I'm not a racist.
Yeah,
I'm not any of those things.
Yeah,
but I don't feel comfortable with this sect of people who's clearly uncomfortable with my existence, right? At least online. Okay, and many people's, a lot of their experience with people is more online than it is in person.
Yeah, right? Today it is.
Which is also dangerous. So
because then you get a lot of telephone tough guys out there too.
So then you just get all these narratives, right? And so here's even the more wild part. I was having a conversation with my friend the other day, and this actually a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that I had built that story, that narrative up in my head so much that I felt uncomfortable going to certain events that were going to be, we'll say, like on a spiritual note because of the general texture of the crowd that's there, right?
Yeah.
And I was making the story, and because I was looking for it, I would find
You found it.
I found it, right? And I was like, oh shit, like, yeah. So no one's absolved from this, right? If we're looking for it, we're going to find it.
Yeah. And humans, I mean, we're, pack creatures. We look for, like, believe, like, you can say what you want, and diversity is wonderful. I love diversity. I love that about the country, but you are going to be drawn to people that look more like you and identify like you. Sure. And that's just kind of how we roll. But I want, what? I'm feeling a little saucy today.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about something a little controversial.
Go for it.
I'm going to share my stance on it. I want to know your stance on it because I think this is applicable. So I have an older sister who wasn't always my older sister.
Okay.
If you catch my drift.
Right.
She is a woman, identifies as a woman. I see her as a woman. However, this stuff that we've gotten into now with transgendered women playing sports on women's teams just does not seem right to me.
Yeah.
Because even though they identify as women and they may be women biologically,
right,
that's a man. Like, I wouldn't want to put my daughter in a wrestling match with, a teenage, somebody who's got bigger muscles,
right,
more testosterone.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Bone density, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about this? Because I've gone back and forth on it, but at the end of the day, and people might give me shit for this too, but that just to me does not. It seems to demean women's sports.
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, so yeah, I'm totally on board with that. Listen, I have lots of friends that are trans, and they fit every little niche that you could possibly imagine.
Me too.
Cool. I have no problem with a person wanting to live an experience. Like, if that's your lived experience,
yeah,
I'm not here to tell you that's not your lived
I'm all for it.
Right?
Do it. Absolutely.
Now, but I have to, there's a massive difference between being born biologically male, right? Or biologically female, right? If you want to call that sex or whatever.
Right. And we're saying that, gender can be a spectrum, call it what you want, but biologically
we're talking biological
about
factors need to determine the place in sports.
Yes.
Right. Look, I didn't make the rules, right? Or I didn't like design human beings. Like, generally speaking, right? Men, better reaction time, right? More muscle mass, higher bone density, all the things that would dictate dominance in sport, right?
Yeah.
You've had Serena Williams play like, who's arguably the best, maybe not even arguably the best female tennis player of all time, get destroyed by a guy that's like, not even anywhere near the top of the heap.
Right.
15-year-old teen soccer team annihilating the women's soccer team that's the best soccer team in the world.
Yeah.
Right? So,
which is not a knock on women at all.
Not women. It's just there are biological differences, right? And to not acknowledge that there are biological differences in sex it's at some point there has to, like, not everything is just like, I don't think it's subjective to say that, is it?
Subjective to say that there's biological differences in men and women?
Yeah.
No, see so before I got into marketing and everything, I have a psychology degree.
Okay.
And, I took human sexuality, did a lot of studies with that. Plus, there's trans people in my family.
Right.
So I'm interested in this. And gender is on a spectrum. There are people that can they can be born biologically one way and identify with a different gender. I have no problem with that. That's completely fine. If you want to live your life one way or the other,
out, bro.
Totally fine. But let's take men and women out of it. I am 6'1" and 225 pounds.
Right.
Would you put me in a wrestling match with somebody who was 5'6" and 160 pounds?
Most likely no.
Probably not. Unless dude is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's why they have weight classes.
Right.
You're trying to match people up that are going to be competitively, placeable to one another, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, I don't think it's subjective. I mean, you are born with a penis or you're born with a vagina, and that
will often accompany other physical attributes.
Other physical attributes,
Right.
exactly. And I'm not saying you have to call this a man and you have to call this, take the label of man and woman out of it. Yes, there's biological differences.
I'm okay with that. I think the reason this is such a hot topic, I think, for a long time, I'm sure it's awful to feel completely out of place. Not only in your body, but in society. Right?
Yeah, or to have people tell you, you're not this, you're that.
Right. So there's a couple different things that go along with this. Another person's identity is actually not my responsibility.
Exactly.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean I won't be cordial, loving, caring, understanding, all those things, right?
Yeah. No, you're still you treat people with kindness and respect.
You're a human being, no matter
exactly.
what, right?
Same here.
But be very careful when you demand that other people validate your experience as a sweeping motion across, because my experience. If I needed everybody to validate my life experience, right? And part of that was like, well, if you don't do X, Y, Z, you're a pussy because that's what my life experience says.
Sure. Yeah, that's
right?
ridiculous.
That's ridiculous, right?
However, somebody who makes a big deal about calling, if they're like, well, I'm just not going to call you a woman because you're not. To me, it's like, just do it. Like, what's the big,
so I actually
it depends on what it
care.
is. Yeah.
I actually don't care.
Yeah.
I don't. It won't be my choice.
Sure. Yeah.
It won't be my. So you can make your own choice.
Right.
Right. Now that doesn't mean you can't be violent towards people.
No.
Right.
No.
But.
And look, call me what you will, but anybody with a daughter, any man with a daughter, you wouldn't want to stack your daughter up against a biological man.
Most of the time, no. There's outliers out there for sure.
Sure.
Most of the time, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's a bad. Look, if the best people in professional sports, the best women in professional sports, get annihilated by average professional athletes, or not even professional athletes, the best soccer team gets beat by a group of teenagers.
Yeah.
Right. Take that data into consideration.
Yeah.
Right? Take that data into consideration. So, yes, if you want to live your life like a woman, absolutely. Just recognize biologically you were born a certain way with certain advantages.
Take the labels out of it.
Take the labels out of it.
Exactly.
No amount of chemicals, puberty blockers, any of that is going to change, particularly if you went through puberty and have, So there's that. And I think there's such a currency now and there's actually a trendiness in this whole topic, particularly if you live in a more Southern California, like a more liberal place like here.
Yes.
I have friends that have kids, multiple kids that identify all over a spectrum. Now, it's not statistically impossible that could happen, but I also know that the people that parent these children push that ideology onto the children, right? And so I think that's pretty interesting, right? And I don't think for people of your sister's generation, that wasn't much less of a thing, if a thing at all, right?
No. It wasn't a thing at all.
That's just her experience,
right?
I'm not so sure about that for a lot of kids these days, right? When I had a 10-year-old kid tell me that he's gender fluid.
Yeah, I mean that the only if indeed that's true, so be it. But the concern there is a 10-year-old brain and identity is not fully formed yet.
Right. And there was nothing fluid about the experience of the kid. Right. So possible.
Yeah.
Right. In engaging with the kid.
Yes.
I'm listening to him talk. Right. And there was nothing fluid about anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying the parents were
that's what it feels like
encouraging it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think that happens a lot. I think the laws about letting kids transition as minors, that's really dangerous. You can't vote, you can't do you can't drink, you can't make a lot of decisions.
Yeah, no, as
a child, I think man, let's give people a chance to fully develop. Like kids have parents for a reason. And
yeah, well, and I'll tell you what, I'll share another vulnerable thing here because this kind of paints this picture. But after I was molested when I was a kid, and I learned what gay was, I thought I was gay because, and you know, like, mind you, I was like 8 when this happened to me, and like 10, 11, you start learning more about the world, and I was like, oh my God, like this guy like touched me, like, what does that mean about me? And I'm not gay,
right?
But I literally like developed like this identity crisis as a kid.
Yeah.
And, you know, once I hit puberty, I was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? But so that like my idea in my head, and like, I wasn't going to go to my parents or anybody and be like, I think I'm gay. You know what I mean? And at that time, if I had, you know, I'm sure my parents would have been like, well, that's fine. Like, we love you no matter what. And I think that's the way to handle it. But, you know, I had that identity and I had no idea what it meant. And then I hit puberty and completely came out of it.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's a great example.
You know what I mean?
That's a great example.
And I'm not saying we're not saying that's what's going on here.
It's just one of the many potentials. Right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's just say if there's all these potentials that happen.
Yeah.
Right. A kid might fucking play with Barbie dolls because that's the toys that are laying around.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he wants to be a girl.
No, my kid has trucks. She's my 7-year-old girl.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, she's about the most feminine creature you could imagine. And I and her mom, we are liberal people. We have never been like, well, you need to like this color. You need to play with these toys. We didn't say any of that. Right. In fact, I've told her you can like, she'd be like, well, blue is a boy's color. And I'll be like, that's ridiculous. No, it's not. You can like it. And she's like, well, I know, but I like this. I like pink. I like purple. But that's just her.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, we can't forget, like, there are people that are just who they are.
Just who they are.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No. And like, so let's give time and space to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I got to decide who I was going to be at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, dude,
I'd be an astronaut.
Yeah. Right. Like,
right.
You know, I wanted to get natural born killer written across my shoulders when I was like 15. I'm my friend Terry talks me out of it. And thank God she was a good older sister in the neighborhood. And,
right.
And she said, it's probably not the best idea.
Maybe don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And fuck, man, I'm glad I didn't do that.
Right.
And like, 'cause, you know, look, I have a natural despising for authority. Right?
Oh yeah.
So like authority for me is
you and
really
me both, man.
challenging. However, right, some structure is needed
for sure.
Right, structure is needed, like, because otherwise we move to chaos. Right. And so and it's a dance, dude. You can't just have chaos, and you can't have so much structure.
It's not black and white.
I think what happens is this, right? So there's this sort of pendulum swing thinking. Okay, if you remember, cancel culture before what we're experiencing now was actually Christian Republicans.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so when we grew up, the assholes, right?
Yeah.
That were just
the Christian nationalists
and these crazy Christians. They don't want anybody having sex. They don't want rap music. They don't
censor everything.
They want to censor bad language. They don't want anybody to have any fun. Right. Yeah. And like that structure was too tight. Okay. So the pendulum things start to loosen, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, right now 2020s. It's almost going to start to swing back the other way. You're going to see in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
You're already starting to see it right now. And I don't think I don't think any of these swings are ultimately healthy. I think they may be necessary to balance out.
Sure.
Right. But what we're in now is chaos. There's no objective reality, right? And everybody's just sort of, and because there's no objective.
Well, yeah, but you can. So the reason why this happens is because just like people have egos, groups of people have egos. Culture has egos.
Yeah.
Language has ego.
Yes.
So yes, you know, it's just like, you know, you had Obama elected, black president, middle name Hussein,
Trump.
Right? Boom, Trump, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's this extreme and that extreme. But what needs to happen is for any change, in my opinion, at least, is people have to go like meta on that and be like, okay, all the way over here, not good. All the way over there, not good.
Gray, bro. It's gray. Like I wrote about this not too long ago, but like human interaction happens in the gray.
Totally.
Right?
100%.
If you sit everyone in this room right now down long enough and we have a long enough conversation, we're going to possibly find some things that we are vehemently opposed on.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Very possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that mean that we have to dehumanize each other and like, well, fucking this guy's got to die?
Yeah, Eric's a piece of shit
Yeah, he's
because
gotta
he doesn't
go.
agree with me
Yeah,
on this
yeah.
policy. No, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's ridiculous.
So,
You know?
so finding the gray with people, like black and white thinking is survival.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you're in survival, you have no room for nuance.
Exactly. This is the goal. We have to get here, and
Have
if
to
we
get
don't,
here,
we're
and
dead.
there's no room for nuance whatsoever.
Yep.
Okay. That's dangerous. We cannot live life in survival. Not anymore. We like that's or
Yeah, we're not running from saber-toothed tigers
right. So
anymore.
well, it's not that we can't. It's we don't need to, and it's not in our best interest. It's not in our best interest to live in black and white. It's not in our best interest to act like there's no fucking nuance, right?
Yeah.
So the conversation that we just had about this very loaded topic, you know, about the trans people and what they experience. There's lots of room for gray. Lots of
But
room
I'm
for
sure
gray.
somebody watching this might be like, look at these two white male
dudes.
pieces
Yeah.
of shit.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and
and
lovingly,
it's like you're completely missing the
right.
point.
And lovingly, they can go fuck themselves.
Yeah,
and
lovingly.
with all the love in the world.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
and at the same time, like, cool, like, hang out in that black and white box.
Yeah.
right. And it's like, think about how crazy it is to just make the experience of any group a monolithic experience, right? That because you're a white dude, right? That this must be your experience.
mm-hmm.
Because Tony's Mexican, this must be your experience, right, Tony? Right? Like you must have the same experience as every other Mexican male, out
Right.
there, right? He probably cheats on his wife, and no. But yeah,
That's right.
but you know, it's like, yeah, we joke about this stuff because
Right.
we're friends, right? But
Yeah.
it's like, dude, I would not know who Tony or Max is if I just write you guys off to the experience of these things that we want to group everybody into.
Yeah.
You miss out on the person.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, there may be some similarities, right? So when you tell me what your race is, what your gender is, what you don't tell me anything about you. Nothing.
Yeah.
I still know nothing about you.
Yep.
That doesn't tell me anything. I could take those things as clues and just decide a bunch of shit about you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And that happens probably more than it doesn't, right?
Yep.
I'm just as guilty of it as anybody. But kind of back to the beginning of our conversation. When I get still and present and I'm with you, I'm actually being with you, not all the stories and meaning that I make about the labels. Right?
Exactly.
So labels are dangerous in that they can be used to make meaning that lets me skip out on seeing you as a person, right? I want to be careful of that because then I don't get to meet you as a person. Labels can actually take the humanity right out of you because I take your labels and I create the story, and in my head, that's who Max is.
Right.
Right. It saves time.
Right.
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 It's effective.
Well, and there's an element for people. Like humans, we like to categorize things. We naturally do this. This good, this bad, this right,
Survival,
this wrong.
and that comes out of survival.
because it's certainty.
Right. Yes.
I know for certain, so now I can play. We don't like uncertainty. We just
don't like
don't.
uncertainty, right? So labels create certainty, right? You want to be real careful about making yourself certain about somebody that you don't know.
Yes.
And I'll
that can be dangerous.
and I'll give you guys the cliff notes. Much as you might think you know somebody, you don't, right? I spend a lot of time with my wife, okay? When I'm certain that I know all of who she is, I get bored, right? It's easy to just take her for granted. She's just there, right? It's an automatic, okay? Then I wake up to the fact that I'm doing that, and I do my best to get present and experience her now. Who is she right now? Who she was yesterday is not who she is right now.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Right? Who you are right now is not who you were 5 years ago.
No.
So what if I just kept my story about you 5 years ago?
Yeah.
right? I don't give you the chance to be who you are being right now, right? If you met me when I was 17, right, and God knows what I did to you when I was 17,
Yep.
like that gives me no room to be any different to you right now. I could actually be capable to give a person love right now when all I could do for them when I was 17 is rob them, take their money, and throw them down a flight of stairs. You know, like so don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to your labels, right? The way that you take these labels and make meaning of them is not a fact, and like that's really important.
Yes,
your interpretations are not facts, right? Labels create interpretations, and they create different interpretations for everyone, right? Some people, right, you could say Trump and they're going to roll their eyes.
Totally.
Okay? Some people, you're going to say Trump and they're going to yell and scream.
Yeah.
Some people are going to cheer. That label creates an interpretation. It's a story.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it's also it's really dogmatic too, because like, you know, if there's a group of people that's demanding another group of people think a certain way, and then they say, well, you know, this is America, I have my freedom, and you're oppressing me, so you need to see my point of view. It's like the other side is doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
And it's like, no, that's exactly like, this is America. You can do what you want and think how you want, and I can do what I want and think how I want. That's what makes this place great.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so I don't know, like it boggles my mind sometimes to the point that people get into like rhetoric and debates about, you know, certain things that frankly are just not all that important.
Right. And I think it's because they get painted black and white.
Yeah.
And when you paint something black and white, you stand to throw somebody.
If you're conservative, you're a racist.
Yeah.
If you're a liberal, then you're a pedophile.
And think about what that means. So think about the black and white of what that means. If I make it convenient for me to just say, because you're a conservative, you're a racist, I get to justify that my safety is at risk because of your belief system.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And so now that warrants me to come at you with more survival thinking.
Hostility.
Okay. Now I could say, oh, Max is a liberal. He probably wants me to have my job shut down again if the C word comes back and they want to lock everything down, and they're going to take, and like that was a real experience for a lot of people, right? That actually for a while made me hate a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because they were taking away my ability to work and to live a life of choice. And so that word, liberal to me for a long time meant you just want to take away my right to do anything. Right. You want to take away my rights and any fun and jokes that I can laugh at, right? And then they'll say, well, you doing that is harmful to other, right? And so everything is black and white. Yep. Everything becomes black and white.
Yeah, totally.
And when it's black and white, it's survival, and there's no way to reach a middle ground there. There's
no, there isn't, and the news perpetuates this.
Yeah,
there was, I can't remember the name, but there was a black kid got shot. I think it might have been in Missouri or something like that. And I remember when this happened, I watched liberal news and conservative news. The conservatives were painting a picture that all the black people were murdering police officers. And the liberal news was painting the situation as like the National Guard was rolling through and murdering all the black people.
Right.
When in reality, it's neither one of those.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like, we like shock value here. We like ratings. We like what's going to get people.
Well, they know what's going to throw people.
They know. Yeah.
You'll watch the news if you need to stay up to date on your safety.
Absolutely. Right. And a lot of people today feel like they need to.
I need to know what the other side's up to.
Yep.
Right. So I can defend myself. Right. Or so I can just, sometimes it's not even that deep. Sometimes it's, I just want to maintain my rightness about how wrong the other team is. And if you got nothing going on in your life, nothing exciting going on in your life, nothing worthwhile going on in your life, being right might be all you got.
Yeah.
Even if being right.
Yeah. Or being a hater.
Yeah.
It's like when you get, I get people that comment on stuff, my band will put something out or something, and like, it's overwhelmingly positive usually, but every now and again, someone's like, this song sucks.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, like you took the time out of your day
to just shit on that.
Like, you got to have not much going on, right? Like I just don't, so I'm like, whatever. But you know what they say? If you don't have haters, you're not doing enough, right?
Yeah. I think Yeah, and I think like that's just another way to be right.
Yeah.
Right. It's just another way to be right.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, I think there's an addiction to being right, and I'll even catch myself sometimes just having discussions about things that I have opinions about, and if I'm not careful, I catch myself wanting to be right. Right. And I notice that I'm like digging my heels in, and everything outside of what I say is right is wrong. Right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just, it becomes, and then I'm not seeing any of the nuance.
Right.
I'm not seeing.
Well, you start to identify with a position.
Identify with it, and I stop seeing the gray and things. And the minute I stop seeing the gray, I'm not seeing the humanity anymore. And now I'm engaged in beliefs.
Yeah, because you're no longer feeling that they're disagreeing with something you believe. You're feeling like they're disagreeing with me as a person.
Yep.
And that feels threatening.
Feels really threatening.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same, as a recovering people pleaser, something I should talk to you about, by the way. When somebody is like, well, I don't like your business service. I don't think you guys are very good. Like, immediately what I feel is like I'm just a piece of shit human being. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you're just so wrapped up in the identification of this is who I am, or, my band, or this and that. And it's very hard. Like, I saw a guy at an AA meeting once who, he was doing he was giving a speech, and somebody went up to him after and was just like, what you said is killing people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't agree with this and that. And he just smiled and he was like, all right, well, thank you so much for the feedback. It's nice to see you here. And I was like, dude, are you like a wizard or something? How did you not lose your shit? And he's like, look, I just decided I was going to be kind.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I don't care how other people treat me because I don't know their experience. I just decided I'm going to be a kind man. You know what I mean? And that at some point, maybe that'll get him into some trouble. You never know. But I thought that was incredible.
No, man, there's a lot of value to that. Look, I'll be driving down the street sometimes. Somebody cuts me off and they'll get, or maybe I don't see somebody and I cut them off on accident. Right. And they start, doing the tough guy shit and getting on the horn, driving next to me.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely a part of me, right? My ghetto side thinks the same thing every time. Homie, if we get out of this car, I'm going to open up your head on the concrete. Right.
Yeah.
And I will enjoy it for half a second.
Yep.
Right. Please don't make me do that. Mm-hmm. And then I laugh because that's not what I'm going to do.
Of course not.
But that guy
it's
comes
in there.
out. That guy comes out and I let him speak, right? And I have a laugh at him, and then I let him go back to wherever he came from.
Yeah.
And then I drive and I laugh and I just go about my day.
Funny thing about that is I had an experience where I had just dropped my daughter off at school, and I'm going to take a right-hand turn on Mira Mesa, and the cars coming from the opposite way had the right of way. So this guy turns left in his truck when I'm turning right, and he pulls in front of me, stops in the middle of the road, gets out of his truck because he technically had the right of way, but I went first.
Right.
And he's walking up on my car, and I grabbed my phone and put it down so I could see him better. And he's like, yeah, go ahead, grab your phone and record me, you piece of shit. And he's screaming at me. And I rolled down the window. I go, look, sir, I apologize. That was not okay. I should not have made that turn. I know that was really dangerous. I'm really sorry. And he's just like,
yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'm sorry. And he just was like, okay, well, have a nice day. Just that simple act of accountability and acknowledgement that I was wrong and apologizing. You could see this guy's whole demeanor just change. Yeah, and then he said, thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, dude, I honestly think that's a really beautiful story in the sense of that could go so many ways.
Yeah. And part of me wanted to get out of the car too and be like,
than the way that it went.
Yeah. That was hard to do that.
Yeah.
It was hard to do that, man.
A week or so ago, I'm training at a gym that's not my gym. And I'm past couple of months I've been on a fucking tear in training. My game is really getting good, and I'm feeling good about myself, and I'm just kind of demolishing people. And I start training with this guy, big guy, strong guy, very good. And we're kind of having a bit of a stalemate. And it starts getting a little bit chippy, And I think he was frustrated. I was a little frustrated that we couldn't get my game going. And so I start getting a little bit more physical with the guy, just a little bit more heavy-handed. and we start getting a little bit of aggressive with each other, and then we get into a little bit of words. He's like, why are you being a dick? And I'm just trying to play it cool, like I'm like just telling him like I'm fine, and I could tell he was upset. I was upset, and then like making that I'm not upset, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like our energy's building, and there's a little voice in me that was activated at the time. I completely lost my sense of presence. My ego was fully there. And I wanted to be like, well, we could step outside then. Right?
Ooh.
Right? But I didn't. Right? The round ended, and I thought about it. And I said, no, that doesn't work for me. So I went over. I put my hand on the guy's shoulder. I said, hey, that's on me. Right? I let my competitiveness and my ego get the best of me there.
Yeah.
That's not cool. And then I asked him, let's train another round. We trained another round, and it was just as hard as the first round, but
that was gone.
But that was gone. Gone.
Yeah.
We had a laugh, complimented each other.
It's amazing what some accountability, just like, I had a conversation. My ex-wife was having a really hard time with my kid and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, have you ever apologized to her? She goes, well, apologize for what? Like, I don't owe her an apology. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Apologize to her and watch how much she, okay, mom. Like it's such a different experience.
Totally. I think parents don't realize, like, have you done anything wrong? No. Right. But I think parents don't realize any size of frustration, all that stuff. Kids wear all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can say, I'm sorry you're feeling like this.
I'm sorry you're feeling like that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I got frustrated with you or like that. And it's like, that shit goes so far.
Dude.
Because look, these are other little people having little experiences. And guess what? They're deciding their whole fucking worldview based off your day-to-day moods. Right?
Exactly.
So I think that's what it's really easy to dismiss that. So, and that doesn't, by all means, man, adults out there raising kids, having to pay for everything, like it is stressful,
hard.
But
sure.
And it doesn't mean that you're wrong for having those moods, right? Just recognize, just be conscious, just be accountable that your humanity, right, wrong, or indifferent, is actually shaping this little person's worldview as you speak, and they are carrying they're creating all their meaning of life based off your moods. And they don't know that this is happening.
Right.
So that's a heavy fucking
It is, and they're like antennas.
On. Yeah, they're little antennas.
If you're trying to play off like you're okay when you're not, kids pick that up.
Oh, yeah.
And my daughter, like I've gotten angry and I've snapped at her. And I've had, I go back and I will apologize. And when I do that and I say, look, you understand, like daddy was just mad. It is not you. It is me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Very, very quickly, that all dissipates.
Dude, I
very
wish my
quickly.
Parents would have done that. Like,
Me too.
That was never.
No,
that was not a thing.
Mine either.
Yeah. Like,
mine either.
They didn't take accountability for nothing.
No,
I saw this guy, but this guy just talking about, his kids, and like I can't yell at my kids and expect them to have a good day.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit about that.
Yeah. It might have been on the Labs podcast actually, but I saw that on a video, and this guy like really realized it. Like, man, like the energy that I'm kicking towards my kids before they leave the house, they're gonna carry that with them into the day, right?
Yeah, it was Tommy said that on the last podcast.
Yeah. So that's important, and like that's amazing to see that. It's for I think as messed up as as being engaged in media will have you think that the world is, because we have a magnifying glass on all the world's problems. There's so much good happening too. Like parents like you are out there doing that type of stuff. Yeah. Like that didn't happen to anybody that I know when I was a kid. Maybe some fucking
me neither. And I had great parents, but they still they weren't like, hey, I'm really sorry that I, no, that.
Yeah, I don't think
this is how you act.
Yeah.
Like, what do you expect?
Yeah, exactly.
Act this way, or that's what happens.
Yeah. So there's more of an understanding of how to relate with people, and so like the way that you're relating with your daughter and taking accountability, like seeing that type of stuff happen, it does give me a lot of hope. I think it's so important. Like, see if like once a day you can just like leave your phone somewhere for a couple of hours, and like not be on it, and see if you can just start extending that. Like, I do use my phone for business. I mean, my business is pretty much ran off my phone.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't have to be like, I could check it every couple of hours and my life's not going to burn down.
Yeah, of course.
And then it's like, well, checking in with, oh, is there any new leads? Is there any this? Is there any that? And just like, man. And by being in that, just getting sucked into taking in information that's telling you that the world is burning. And it's like I always say, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, are there places where there's really bad things happening right now? Sure.
Yeah. But it's not all black and white.
But it's not all black and white. Yeah, it's not all black and white. So, yeah, I think I'll probably talk about that a million times as episodes go on. But I'll just for the viewers, just encourage them to just examine their own black and whiteness about certain things.
Yep.
And
did you come up with that, or did somebody plant that into your head? Because that's another thing like that I ask people, because like I've got family. They're like, well, we're conservatives. I'm like, well, yeah, because your parents are.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, have your own fucking views, dude. Have your own views. One of the things I'm super blessed with is that by not having a close relationship with my family growing up,
you raised yourself.
I raised myself. I got to pick my own belief systems largely, right?
Yep.
Like, so, yeah, I didn't have to be married to any specific identity. From the bar in my family was set very low. It's like, try not to die and go to jail. And if you do go to jail, try not to go back. And like, you're a winner, So that was the bar in my family. Well, yeah, I think we'll wrap it right there, man. I enjoyed that conversation.
Me too.
And I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. If you do enjoy the conversation, guys, what would mean the world to me, to us, is to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Let your friends know about this. If you like the things that we're talking about, if you don't like the things that we're talking about, please ask us questions. Super open to the feedback. I would love some constructive dialogue. If you want to tell me to go fuck myself, you can do that too. Send DMs, ask questions. Let us know what you'd like to hear more of, what you'd like to see on here. We really want to make this something that's valuable to the people. Yeah, it's a safe place for your opinions, and we're not going to judge you and put you in a box for it. We'll talk about it. You ask a good question, we'll talk about it on the show on the next episode that me and Max do. See you guys next time.